This is Mac OS Ken.
What the heck happened to Apple shares? Horace Dediu assigns value to iPhone users, and the UK backs off its demand for a magic door. It is Thursday, the 7th of September, 2023. I'm Ken Ray, and this is news from Mac OS Ken, brought to you by yours truly and supported by people like you, patrons through Patreon. Find out more and add your support at patreon.com/MacOSCan. If you're wondering what happened to Apple shares on Wednesday, name it. Shares in the Cupertino company ended the day down $6.79, a decline of just over 3.5%, closing at $182.91. But why? Four possible reasons popped up all over the place. The one that has the least to do with Apple itself is tied to worries around inflation. The Wall Street Journal says stocks slumped on Wednesday after investors received a fresh sign that the U.S. economy could be revving up, fanning inflation fears. While tech took the hardest hit, the journal says losses were broad-based, with everything from shares of real estate companies to manufacturers and banks falling. As for the reason specific to Cupertino's own, opinions are like Apple products. Everybody's got one. Well, at least one. Apple 3.0 left off the inflation fears, listing three other contributing factors that turned up all over the place: a ban on the use of Apple products by officials in the Chinese government, Apple officially being deemed a gatekeeper under the EU's Digital Markets Act, and a late-in-the-game prediction from TrendForce that sales of iPhone 15 Pro will not be enough to lift iPhone revenue. Let's tackle them in that order, starting with China. Quoting another report from the Wall Street Journal, China ordered officials at central government agencies not to use Apple's iPhones and other foreign-branded devices for work or bring them into the office, people familiar with the matter said. So it's not just Apple, except for the part where it is. For years, analysts and Apple watchers have read numbers from the China Academy of Information and Communications Technology dealing with handsets foreign to China as synonymous with iPhone numbers. Put another way, banning the use of foreign branded devices is pretty much just banning the use of iPhone. While iPhones have been off limits for some officials in the Chinese government for a while, the piece says the new rules represent a widening of those restrictions. The journal says they also indicate an intensified effort by Beijing to ensure its rules are strictly enforced. As for why now, reasons within reasons. The paper had a chat with a former China director on the National Security Council. On the security front, says the source, Beijing might be concerned about backdoor access to government employee data. On the economic front, he says, China would likely welcome the market share gains for domestic manufacturers. All that said, consumers in China love iPhone. The journal says the latest move by Beijing could have a chilling effect for foreign brands in China, including Apple, though that argument is sort of undone by the Wall Street Journal. In 2021, says the very same article, the Chinese government restricted the use of Tesla vehicles by military staff and employees of key state-owned companies, citing concerns that data the cars gather could be a source of national security leaks. Still, Tesla vehicles have continued to sell well in the country. The China thing may have been a contributing factor. Next up, the European Union. As had so been expected, a report from CNBC says that the European Commission has deemed 6 tech giants as gatekeepers under the Digital Markets Act, and Apple is on that list. Going alphabetically, it's Alphabet, funny enough, followed by Amazon, Apple, ByteDance, Meta, and Microsoft. What could that mean for Apple? Well, the point on which most people focus is the one where Apple will likely be forced to open the iPhone to third-party app stores and or side-loading applications. Quoting CNBC, smaller internet firms and other businesses have complained of being hurt by these companies' business practices. For instance, the mobile operating systems of Google and Apple, which are the primary mobile OS platforms worldwide, charge a 30% fee for in-app purchases, which companies including Spotify and Epic Games have claimed are too high. The news wasn't all bad for Apple. Remember Apple's argument that iMessage was too small in the European Union to fall under the DMA's purview? Authorities will take a bit more time to consider that argument. Then again, some bad news may have come as a bit of a surprise. Quoting the report, the EU will also investigate whether Apple's iPad OS, the operating system behind the tech giant's line of iPad tablets, should be pronounced a gatekeeper, even though the European Commission says it does not meet the criteria. Bonus. All along, Apple has expressed concern about the privacy and data security risks that the Digital Markets Act poses for its users. Still gonna go with the flow. CNBC says Apple and the rest of the gatekeepers will have 6 months to bring their core platform services into compliance with the obligations laid out in the DMA. The DMA thing may have been a contributing factor. One of the brightest spots on the Apple landscape is next week's anticipated reveal of the iPhone 15 line and ensuing sales of said, particularly sales on the Pro end. While a lot of hope hangs on those, a piece from Apple Insider has TrendForce indicating that they won't be enough to turn iPhone sales positive. Anyway, that's one way to read what TrendForce said. While the firm thinks units at the Pro end, particularly the iPhone 15 Pro Max, will be awesome, the firm points out that Apple faces a marketplace teetering on uncertain ground. From the chilling headwinds of global inflation to China's murky economic prospects, the terrain is fraught with challenges. Adding to the complexity is the maturation of smartphone technology, which has led consumers to extend their device replacement timelines, dialing down this once sizzling market dynamism. Then, they go nerdy in the supply chain. TrendForce sees orders for CMOS image sensors shrinking a bit this year. That is being read as TrendForce predicting shrinkage for iPhone 15 Pro Max. But, as Apple Insider points out, Apple has been outperforming the market. While orders for those sensors could be down globally, Apple could actually be buying more this year than it did for like components last year. Anyway, the TrendForce thing may have been a contributing factor. People looking for glad tidings around Apple should look to the folks who use iPhone. 9to5Mac has a Simcoe's Horace Dediu figuring the worth of an iPhone user versus that of a user of Android. Spoiler, it's more. Dediu says about a decade ago he started hearing anecdotally that developers who made apps for both platforms had twice as many users using Android, but that iPhone App Store revenues were roughly twice those of the Google Play Store. Multiply or divide that by that, carry the one, and Dediu decided that an iPhone user was about 4 times more valuable than an Android user. Half the users paying 4 times as much means double the income. Roughly 10 years later, the data is more plentiful, the math's more complicated, and the value of an iPhone user is up. Grab the slide rule, slide it around, never forget to carry the one. And according to Dediu's new math, today's iPhone customer is 7.4 times more valuable to developers than the Android customer. For iPhone, Dediu figures monthly revenue per user of $10.40. Sounds big, but could be small once Apple Vision Pro and subsequent devices make the scene. As we look forward to spatial computing, writes Dediu, The idea of increasing that spend from $10 a month for a small glass rectangle in your palm to perhaps $100 a month for an immersive 360-degree 3D experience does not sound too crazy. No, not crazy. Maybe a bit optimistic. Time will tell. One thing's for sure, there will be no shortage of apps ready for Apple Vision Pro at launch, though the number built for the headset is still up in the virtual air. Likely taking a page from iPad's debut, a piece from TechCrunch says apps that run on iPhone or iPad will not only run on Apple's mixed reality headset, they'll just be in the App Store for Apple Vision Pro. In a post to developers, the Cupertino company said by default, your iPad and or iPhone apps will be published automatically on the App Store on Apple Vision Pro. Most frameworks available in iPadOS and iOS are also included in visionOS, which means nearly all iPad and iPhone apps can run on visionOS unmodified. Customers will be able to use your apps on visionOS early next year, when Apple Vision Pro becomes available. And finally today, you know that thing where Apple was thinking of pulling iMessage out of the UK thanks to new rules governing encrypted messages in the UK? Yeah, never mind those new rules. A BBC report from late July had the UK government planning changes to the Investigatory Powers Act. According to the report, the government wanted messaging services to clear security features with the Home Office before releasing them to customers. Additionally, the proposed update would let authorities demand security features be disabled without telling the public. All of that was a non-starter for Apple. The Beeb had the Cupertino company saying it would not make changes to security features specifically for one country that would weaken a product for all users, that some changes would require issuing a software update so could not be made secretly, and the proposals constitute a serious and direct threat to data security and information privacy that would affect people outside the UK. So, no. And if you try to make us, we'll pull FaceTime and iMessage from the United Kingdom. A little over a month later, the UK has backed down. A Financial Times piece indicates that it was the pushback from the likes of Signal and WhatsApp that pushed the government back. According to the report, the UK government has conceded it will not use controversial powers in the Online Safety Bill to scan messaging apps for harmful content until it is technically feasible to do so, postponing measures that critics say threaten user privacy. What they're hoping will one day be technically feasible is a backdoor that only works for good guys, scanning technology that only scans bad things and never scans good things, a way to weaken encryption without weakening encryption. That is the thing from which they've backed away, for now anyway. According to the report, a member of the House of Lords said that Ofcom, the tech regulator, would only require companies to scan their networks when a technology was developed that was capable of doing so. Many security experts believe it could be years before any such technology is developed, if ever. Quoting Lord Whatsit, a notice can only be issued where technically feasible and where technology has been accredited as meeting minimum standards of accuracy in detecting only child sexual abuse and exploitation content. Scanning technology that only scans bad things and never scans good things. Good that they're willing to wait. macOS Ken, brought to you by me and supported by people like you, patrons through Patreon. Find out more and add your support at patreon.com/macosken. Advertising handled by Backbeat Media, online at backbeatmedia.com. You can reach me a couple of ways. info@macosken.com or call 716-780-4080. Until next time, that is news from macOS Ken. I'm Ken Ray.
Ciao.